Although there are different ways for us to work with objects inside JavaScript, the easiest one is using JavaScript Object Notation, also known as JSON objects. The idea here is that I'm going to create an object using curly braces, and inside that I'm going to create a structure using key and value. And I'm going to separate those using column. I can assign this JSON notation to a variable, and therefore I can create an object like this. Let's make an example. So if I go back to my code and I create, let's use the student object where I create first name, John, last name, Smith, and then console log student, the object is student. So if I save, you can see that I have an object, student, which has two properties, first name and last name, first name John, last name Smith. This is the easiest way for create an object with multiple properties. Also, I can get any value that I want from any property. To do that, I just need to include the name of my object, period, the name of the property that I want to extract. So I could do something like this. If I want to get the first name, I can do student.firstname, and that would retrieve the first name property, in this case, John. I can also create methods, and for creating methods, it's going to be similar to creating a property. I'm going to set a key, but I'm going to assign a function to that, and that function can return whatever I need. I don't need to return anything for my method. My method could just execute something, but I can also return something. In this case, for the full name method, I'm just returning first name plus last name. For creating properties and methods, they work exactly the same way. It's a key separated by a colon. The only difference between a property and a method is that a method is a function and a property is not. That's a value. And if I want to get the result from this method, I'm just going to call that the same way that I call a property, but also the same way I call a function, which is including parentheses. So let's print the full name, student.fullname, and then open and close parentheses that would execute my method. However, if I save that, you're going to see that we are going to get an error, reference error, because first name doesn't exist. It was not defined. How it was not defined? If I can see that first name is here. So I do have a first name. Why it's not getting that? That's simply the way an object works. Whenever we create a method, it's going to have its own scope inside here. Whatever I create, it's going to have its own scope, and whatever I try to use, like something like first name or last name, it's going to look for a variable called first name and last name. So let's say I do have a variable first name, which I'm going to assign Mary, and I'm also going to create a variable last name, which I'm going to assign Jane. If I save, you can see that now it is working. I am getting Mary Jane as a full name. But that's not what I want. The idea of the method is that I can have something, so I have properties and I have this method, which is a function. This method should interact with the data inside of that. And how can I get something from this object? And that's the keyword, this. Whenever we are working with an object, if I want to get a property from the object itself, inside a method, I want to get this property, I need to use the keyword this to refer to the object itself. So instead of getting last name, I'm going to get this dot last name. If I save that, you can see now I'm getting full name Mary Smith, because first name I'm still getting from the variable, last name I'm getting Smith from the property, because the keyword this is making reference to the object and getting the property. I can do the same for first name. If I save, now I get full name John Smith, which means I no longer need those variables here. So if I save, this is my object where I have two properties, first name and last name, and I have a method full name, which is returning a string. So this is how we can create objects using JSON notation. However, there is an issue with JSON notation. Let me show you an example and see if you can spot what I mean. Let me create another object, but actually let me create an array of students. For my first student, I'm going to create a property first name John, last name Smith, and then the method full name, which is going to be a function, which is going to return this dot first name and this dot last name. For my second object, I'm going to create another student, also name Mary, last name Jane, and then the method get full name, which I'm going to return same thing, return this dot name and this dot last name. Now that I have that object, let me just create a for each loop, and for each student, let me just log student dot first name and also log student dot get full name. And that's it. That's my application. That should work fine, but if you are paying attention, you know it's not going to work. If I save, here is my first error. It's saying that the type that the student get full name is not a function. But I do have here get full name. The issue is that I have two different objects, and for one object I have created the method get full name, and for the other one I have create just full name. So I need to be careful whenever I am creating a list of objects to make sure that all of those objects have the same properties and the same methods. In this case, I made a mistake, so I needed to fix that and change it to get full name. If I save, now I don't get any error, but still it's not working fine, because for the first one, I log student first name John, and then get full name John Smith. And then for the second interaction, for the student, I get first name undefined, but the full name I'm getting right, Mary Smith. That's because whenever I try to get first name, that is part of my first object, but it's not part of my second object. My second object, I made another mistake, and instead of calling the property first name, I called just name. So I need to fix that and change here to be first name, and also here to be first name. If I save, now everything works as expected. So creating objects using JSON notation is easy, but also I can make a lot of mistakes if I don't pay attention to the keys that I am creating. This is why we have another way for creating objects inside JavaScript, which is using classes.